You may recognize some of these photographs. Classic images taken in the early 1900s, these images were taken by Edward Sheriff Curtis, an American photographer. His fame was built upon these images, which became part of the romantic narrative of America and Western culture at large. In order to create this incredible sense of romanticism, Ed Curtis paid natives to pose, often dressing them in items to perpetuate identity through costume and headdresses he deemed fit, ultimately defining the indigenous stereotype that still exists today. Curtis famously said of his work, "I want to make them live forever," thus supplanting the relic, an image and concept that has never really allowed indigenous people to be modern. He took indigenous stories and likenesses upon his shoulders because he felt he needed to document the vanishing race. And Curtis is among those who've been privileged to witness something that does not belong to them, but feel it's his right to take that story, pervert it by their own ideals, misconceptions, and perceptions, holding themselves up as the savior and teller of stories about those they deem unfit to tell themselves. In truth, there are people in this world that when confronted with our image, cannot help themselves.
What made the red man red? What made the red man red? Teach 'em all about red man, red man.
Your history books, your holidays, Thanksgiving lies and Columbus Day. Tell me what I know more than the teacher. Tell me what I know more than the preacher. Tell me why you think the red man is red, stained with the blood from the land who bled. Tell me why you think the red man is dead, with the fake headdress on your head. Tell me what you know about thousands of nations.
So, The Last American Indian on Earth is a performance art piece I started in the summer of 2013. The concept was about taking an outfit that embodies the indigenous stereotype. The headdress is central to that, of course. Few things are quintessentially Indian in America than a headdress. The whole outfit's fake. It's made in China and not real indigenous regalia, which is okay because all I really need to do is fit the American image of what they often believe an Indian is. So my goal was to document reactions that average Americans would have to this image. At first, when we started this, my equipment wasn't perfect, so the focus was on photographs. My wife, Megan, took all the initial images, and my good friend, E-Man, he shot video so that there was at least some documentation. And the images were perfect, but we quickly began to realize that the video was volatile and almost completely unbelievable unless you're looking at it with your own eyes. But with just a few seconds of video, I knew this was bigger than the photos or even just a standalone performance piece.
Hey, I was wondering. I was wondering what compelled you to do that sound with your mouth just now.
Yeah. Right there.
Yeah, why did you feel the need to do that?
Because they got the Indian thing on.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you think that's offensive at all to Native Americans when you do that?
Well, no.
No?
Actually, because I'm a Redskins fan.
So I have some good images and some rough video. It was enough to get me into the Huffington Post and garner interest from the Washington Post. It was at about this time that I met a graduate student named Dakota, who was working on his master's in photojournalism. He was the upgrade that I needed because of the equipment that he had. So we made an agreement. He would use me as his master's thesis and in turn give me access and the rights that I needed to the photos and the footage for my final piece, which I had mentioned in the Huffington Post, a film. It was clear that my interaction documentation game went up, and I could concentrate on the performances and the various social concepts therein. And when you let those cameras roll, Americans, they do not disappoint.
You don't look any different
Then what?
than any other American.
Yeah? I don't know what to tell you.
What kind of hair do you have?
It's dark.
Is it straight?
Yeah,
Yeah. Are you pure Indian?
I'm half.
No. Was there any intermarriage?
Yes, I'm half.
You're half it.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you're half Indian and half what?
White.
White. Oh, that.
That's why I say, do you know they?
So you're not 100%.
No, ma'am.
Are there any 100% left?
Of course.
But still. I think I saw Indians when I went out west.
And do you, the half of the family that's Indian, do you relate to better?
It's family. I mean, I suppose I relate to it just as much as I relate to any other family. So I'm certain it's no different than your family.
This, my friends, is what dehumanization looks like. The older woman states with great surprise that I look like any other American. The assumption being that somehow we're not human, and she's surprised to see an Indian up close, and that Indian is in fact a human being. She then begins to weigh and measure my features and questioned the percentage of Indian I am, as though trying to decide if I'm Indian enough to matter. Her counterpart then begins to ask how I can relate to my other half if I identify as Indian, as though relating to each other as human beings is an impossibility. It reminds me of the time that someone once said to me that half-breeds have no place in society because they're neither one nor the other.
Easy. Can we get a picture with you?
Sure.
Here.
So how's it glowing?
It's going great.
But things aren't always bad. Sometimes people just want to get a picture with you.
And illustrate that I'm actually not being sensitive, that it's actually a real issue that's happening, and that people have this relationship, like America as a whole has a relationship with indigenous people that is socially retarded.
Yeah.
And that's important. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Can I get your picture?
Sure.
Thank you. Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good.
Can you get pictures?
Sure.
Okay, cheese. Go in. Act like you love her.
These are seemingly just simple photographs, something that's easily had with the accessibility of cameras nowadays. But there has to be a question about the commodification of the indigenous image. There could be an argument where someone says that I'm asking for it because I'm dressed a certain way. But simply being dressed this way begets a very specific reaction that almost never exists with any other group or ethnicity. In fact, I'm pretty sure I would never get this kind of reaction in public unless I was naked.
I saw you, man. There had to be. What, you mind?
What?
What's up with the outfit?
Just shopping today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We don't see very many Indians coming through here. That's all.
It's true.
Here you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I take a big test?
Yeah.
And this can even be true with me. Sometimes I want the picture.
Can I get a picture with you?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Josh, nice to meet you. Michael, good to meet you guys. So, I think I'm gonna go bomb this couple's wedding photos.
Now, there's another thing that came up in this performance piece that I never intended on, and that is having an opinion about the Washington football team. Having lived in the Washington, D.C. area for over a decade and a half, I suppose it was bound to come up. It was certainly tied together by local news and media, and I was being asked to voice my opinion, which, incidentally, was pretty strongly opposed to racial slurs and disembodied heads on the side of helmets. And next thing I know, I'm being called an activist.
Back at 247, while the nation's capital struggles with the issue of what to call the Washington football team, a performance art piece and social project that explores how people stereotype Native Americans. So you come at this from a number of different directions. But as an artist, first of all, Americans have a lot of different and conflicted feelings. Native Americans and non-native born Americans about how all this goes. Tell me what your feeling is right now. Is the Redskins name offensive? Should it be changed?
Looking back now, I can say that at this exact moment, right here, I knew I needed to be very open and very public with my opinion in disavowing the Washington football team. Not just as an indigenous man or as a 17-year resident of the Washington, D.C. area, but as a father to indigenous children.
What are we talking about here? I mean, we're talking about a dialogue.
So I found myself on a couple of local spots. I was invited onto Kamau Bell's Totally Biased on FX in New York City, and then ultimately was a part of a Native American panel that was invited onto The Daily Show.
Why was this group of Native American activists so upset?
It's a name that impairs, disables, disenfranchises our population.
In my mind, all of this comes in second to the opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with other indigenous people and non-natives in an effort to enact change. Standing on a stage in Minneapolis in front of 5,000 people and seeing the amount of people that wanted change to eliminate stereotypes and mascots and the use of racial slurs was pretty overwhelming. So what does the elimination of indigenous mascots, the desire to eliminate popular stereotypes, have to do with a performance art piece called The Last American Indian on Earth? It really has almost everything to do with it. This performance art piece is about dehumanization and stereotype, about the image that is perpetuated through American culture that can only exist in a headdress or a single feather coming from the back of your head. That you have to look a certain way, you have to dress a certain way, and you have to talk a certain way in order to be considered an indigenous person. The performance of this piece isn't really me. It's really everybody else. It's like a performance art piece that's actually in the form of a social mirror. I can show you how deep-seated the misconceptions are among Americans and in American culture. I mean, so deep-seated, in fact, that there's a football team with a racial slur as its name. But for the year that I did this piece, nobody illustrated how incredibly inept Americans are in understanding indigenous people and understanding the place that indigenous people have been thrust into through colonization, misunderstanding, and miseducation than this woman.
What are you? What tribe are you from, sir?
Northern.
I am part Cherokee. I just want you to know that. And I don't go walking around in...
I'm a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe.
Are you really?
Where my mother was born, and does that deserve a high five?
Yes, it does. Can I take a picture?
Oh, sure.
I can take a picture with you. Are you serious?
Yeah.
This is the happiest day of my life. Who sent you? Police department?
I'm just out sightseeing.
Secret Service?
Yeah.
FBI?
Indians don't really have a good relationship with FBI or police. So.
Can I? You're part of me. You know, we feel about you the same way that we feel about you the same way we feel about Africans in our mother country, that we don't know who they are, but we know that we're a part of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what they used to call me when I went to work?
Tell me.
Pocahontas.
Wow.
Not kidding. How?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is your I was going to say slave name. No, it's not. I don't. My slave name is Paige. But that was the name of my British slave owners years ago. They named us Paige. But now what is your tribe name?
It's Greg.
No.
Yeah.
Running Cloud, Red River, something that I can keep in my heart.
How about Walking Eagle?
Oh, whoa! Is that right? Is that the truth?
Yeah.
Walking Eagle? piece, man. That is so neat. So
While Pocahontas Page may seem extreme, she's also an incredible representation of how people often interact with Indigenous people. I dare say that the majority of Natives have had some element of this type of interaction, and amplified even more so when wearing regalia or perceived regalia. But what's interesting is how this starts. Pocahontas Page starts with self-righteous indignation, claiming to be part Cherokee, and is upset at what I'm wearing. At the exact moment she discovers that I am, in fact, Native, she takes a bucket of romanticism and she dumps it over her head, changing her disposition to something that doesn't even come close to resembling how this began. She's cooing, leaning on me and touching me, a good illustration of how Natives in general are objectified, an objectification not dictated by gender. And of course, it must be said that when she asks my Indian name, I give her the old Charlie Hill joke, a Native comedian. The only time an eagle walks is when it's too full of crap to fly. And that was the last day that I worked as the last American Indian on Earth. Now, if you remember, Dakota and I were working together on this for mutual benefit. He for his master's thesis, and me to produce a film. This was of vital importance because oftentimes Indigenous people don't get to tell their own stories, and I felt that this story was something that needed to be told. Dakota had to produce a video for his master's thesis presentation, a video with which had a significant amount of footage that predated our friendship that I gave to him with permission for his presentation. Once he was done with his presentation for his master's thesis, he was so proud of the film that he created that he submitted it to the DC Shorts Film Festival. He listed himself as the director, used the footage that we shot together as well as the footage that predated our relationship, and he called his film The Last American Indian on Earth, thus undermining my efforts to create a film to tell an Indigenous story from an Indigenous perspective. When I confronted Dakota, he dismissed it, stated something along the lines of some journalistic concept of having the right to tell the story that he witnessed. His film played the sad bastard Indian finding himself through his art narrative, an obvious narrative for somebody wrapped up in colonialism and their own racial superiority. And you know, once I got past being angry about the outcome of this project, I realized something. Much like Edward Curtis and the thousands of non-natives that followed him, the romanticized narrative of Indigenous people is uncontrollably attractive, adding in a dose of American culture, something that has significant traces of racial superiority, misplaced benevolence, and a misunderstanding of America's first peoples, coupled with a desire to continually take things that do not belong to them, even something as simple as a story. We see repeats of history that continue today, and in realizing that someone like Dakota sees this image, is privy to the process and the story, the truth is, he cannot help himself. Once you get past that, I suddenly realized that this was an absolute perfect ending to a story about this image that exists within Western culture and how Indigenous people are not allowed to own our own image or even tell our own stories. And this is me telling my own story, despite what happened, and seeing that Dakota is part of the story. He's part of the narrative of the last American Indian on Earth. And in all of this, I felt incredibly assured about my work. The use of art, and more specifically performance art, is another step in the dialogue of asserting that identity in an effort to empower ourselves and, even more importantly, our children. That is something Nons seem to miss in all of this. They focus on Indigenous people forgetting the past and how we need to get over it. An interesting notion when every September 11th we're told to never forget. There is power in knowing our history, good, bad, or indifferent. We are empowered by it. We are propelled by it. And everything we do now isn't for us, but for our children and our children's children. We are rising up and creating change in our communities and throughout the land that we call North America. We recognize that this is Indian land, that we are a covenanted people in the space that the Creator has given us, that we are stewards over this land, and we will continue to grow and rise and empower ourselves through knowledge of history and of self, overcoming ethnic genocide. We know where we came from. We know how we got here. The policies that have been put in place throughout American history have been policies of elimination. Simply knowing that means knowing that our very existence is a protest, and we will protest for as long as we carry breath.
To know you, to know your voice, to know you makes me whole, it makes me whole. Danced in dirt and smoke, you don't listen. Illegal, so loud in the name of Christian. And all of this time we waited, breath held up, it was baited. 7 lives anticipated, get over it by now. Lead me on my feet, keep moving. Makes me whole, it makes me whole. Become as long as I'm breathing. Makes me whole, it makes me whole. Flew far on the wind, I am silent. Steps go up and down, a mother's crying. Brother, you left your shoes, I sleep to miss